dear children, welcome back. Hope you all are keeping yourselves safe at home. And let's be full of hope that we all will cross and pass through this difficult time when this pandemic is faced by the whole world. And this is exactly we are going to learn in this chapter that we have started in the first part. And that hope is a rope to come out of all difficulties. So let's resume our discussion of the chapter. We are not afraid to die if we can all be together. And let's start. So students, we had left our discussion in the earlier video till here. Now we are going to resume the discussion from the next paragraph. And in the next paragraph, the narrator is saying that first inclination of impending disaster came at about 6 p.m. with an ominous silence. The wind dropped and the sky immediately grew dark. Then came a growing roar, and an enormous cloud towered aft of the ship. With horror, I realized that it was not a cloud, but a wave like no other I had ever seen. It appeared perfectly vertical and almost twice the height of the other waves, with a frightful breaking crest. So as he is starting this paragraph with writing the first indication of impending disaster. Now impending here stands for something which is about to happen. Okay, so he was getting this indication that something worse is going to happen now. Meaning of ominous silence we had already discussed when the meaning of expression was discussed. Ominous silence means unpleasant or threatening silence, you may say. Okay, so the wind dropped, and so this indication had come to him about 6 p.m. with an ominous silence, and the wind dropped and the sky immediately grew dark. So he's telling that around 6 p.m. an unpleasant silence rolled over, and it was an indication of a disaster which was about to happen. Okay, the wind suddenly dropped and the sky was darker with heavy clouds, and a huge cloud was coming towards the stern of the ship. But later the narrator realized that it was a huge wave. It was not a cloud, but it was a huge wave, and the wave was perfectly vertical, and it was twice the height of the previous wave that they had already faced 2 days back. So they saw with the top of the wave looking unpleasant due to its height, and this was the first indication of the worst situation that they are going to face now. Now further he says, the roar increased to a thunder as the stern moved up the face of the wave, and for a moment I thought we might ride over it. But then a tremendous explosion shook the deck. A torrent of green and white water broke over the ship. My head smashed into the wheel, and I was aware of flying overboard and sinking below the waves. I accepted my approaching death, and as I was losing consciousness, I felt quite peaceful. So tremendous here stands for a very great in amount. Okay, and an explosion shook the deck. Shook is the past tense of shake, and it means vibrating, so deck started vibrating. And I hope that meaning of deck, deck is the floor of a ship. The floor of a ship is called a deck. Torrent means a fast moving stream of water. Okay, rush of water, that is torrent. And smashed, another word smashed is given. Smashed means shattered or violently broken. Okay, now next happening, what he is telling you here, that the thunder increased and the wave moved the stern up. and they thought that it would not do any damage, but a huge explosion vibrated the deck, and a strong moving stream of green and white water broke over the ship. And the narrator's head smashed in the wheel of the ship, and he flew overboard and sank below the waves. He accepted that his death was approaching and started losing consciousness. And when he about to lose his consciousness, he felt quite peaceful there in the end. Then he says, unexpectedly, my head popped out of the water. A few meters away, Wave Walker was near capsizing. Her masts almost horizontal. Her here stands for the ship, Wave Walker. So Wave Walker was near capsizing and her mast almost horizontal. Then a wave hurled her upright. My lifeline jerked taut. I grabbed the guardrails and sailed through the air into Wave Walker's main boom. Subsequent waves tossed me around the deck like a rag doll, and my left ribs cracked, my mouth filled with blood and broken teeth. Somehow I found the wheel, lined up the stern for the next wave, and hung on. Now, capsizing means be overturned in the water. Okay. So her mast almost horizontal, and then the wave hurled her upright. Hurled means throw with a great force, that it hurled. Okay. So what the narrator is telling you, that the narrator's head popped out of water. The ship was about to overturn, but a wave turned her upright, and his lifeline jacket was stretched. Okay. Taut means stretched. And he grabbed the guardrails and sailed to the shipman's pole. The waves tossed him around the deck, and he was injured as his left ribs cracked, and his mouth filled with blood, and he had a broken tooth. So he found the wheel, lined the stern for the next wave, and waited over there. Water, water everywhere. I could feel that the ship had water below, but I dared not abandon the wheel to investigate. Suddenly, the front hatch was thrown open and Mary appeared. "We are sinking," she screamed. "The docks are smashed and we are full of water." "Take the wheel," I shouted as I scrambled for the hatch. So as he is telling you here that there was water everywhere, the narrator could feel water below the ship, but he did not leave the wheel alone. Suddenly the front door opened and his wife Mary came, and she was screaming that they were sinking. She said that the decks are smashed and we are full of water. The narrator handed her the wheel and climbed towards the door. Now Larry and Herb are the two crewmen that they had hired. Okay, when they were moving, they started moving to the east side. So Larry and Herb were pumping like madmen. Broken timbers hung at crazy angles. The whole starboard side bulged inwards. Clothes, crockery, charts, and tins and toys sloshed about in deep water. I half swam, half crawled into the children's cabin. "Are you all right?" I asked. "Yes," they answered from an upper bunk. "But my head hurts a bit," said Sue. Sue here stands for Susan, his daughter, pointing to a big bump above her eyes. I had no time to worry about bumped heads. After finding a hammer, screws, and canvas, I struggled back on deck. With the starboard side bashed open, we were taking water with each wave that broke over us. If we couldn't make some repairs, we would surely sink. So this is a tragic scene over here. The crewmen Larry and Herb were pumping the water very fast. They were working like a madman, as it is written here. They were pumping out the water like madmen. And the timbers of the ship were broken and were hanging badly. And the starboard of the ship had sunk. Clothes, crockery, charts, tins, and toys were roaming around in deep water. And the narrator swam and crawled to the children's cabin. He wanted to find out the children are all right or not. So to find out this thing, he started crawling towards the children's cabin and asked the children whether they were all right. So the children replied in yes, and Sue, his daughter, complained about a big bump on her head. But the narrator didn't pay much attention to it, as his major concern was to save them. So the narrator found screws, hammer, and canvas. He went back to the deck, and the broken starboard side was letting so much water in. So if the narrator could not fix the problem, they would all sink in the sea. Now he further tells you that somehow I managed to stretch canvas and secure waterproof hatch covers across the gaping holes. Some water continued to stream below, but most of it was now being deflected over the side. More problems arose when our hand pump started to block up, with the debris floating around the cabins and the electric pump short-circuited. The water level rose threateningly. Back on deck, I found that our 2 spare hand pumps had been wrenched overboard, along with the forestay sail, the jib, the dinghies, and the main anchor. Then I remembered we had another electric pump under the chart room floor. I connected it to an out pipe and was thankful to find that it worked. The night dragged on with an endless, bitterly cold routine of pumping, steering, and working the radio. We were getting no replies to our mayday calls, which was not surprising in this remote corner of the world. So the narrator stretched the canvas cloth and secured the waterproof hatch with covered the gaping holes. Okay, and some water streamed below and some was now deflected over the side. Deflected here means turned aside. Okay, so the hand pump was blocked as rubbish was floating around the cabins and entered it. The electric pump short-circuited. So as the water level rose, the narrator found 2 hand pumps had been removed along with the rope jib, a small boat, and the main anchor. So he found another electric pump under the chart room and he connected it to an out pipe, and it started working. So the night dragged on with an endless, bitterly cold routine of pumping, steering, and working the radio. But there were no replies to their signals sent over the radio, as they were in the remotest part of the world. So their mayday calls were not responded by anyone. Next he says, Sue's head had swollen alarmingly. She had 2 enormous black eyes, and now she showed us a deep cut on her arm. When I asked why she hadn't made more of her injuries before this, she replied, I didn't want to worry you when you were trying to save us all. So Sue's head was now more swollen and she had 2 back eyes with a deep cut in her arm. When upon being asked why she didn't tell him about her injuries earlier, she said that she didn't want to worry him as he was trying to save all of them. So dear children, we are leaving our discussion here for today, and in the next video we shall resume our discussion from the next paragraph. Till then, goodbye.